church girls. On September 15th, 1963, it was an act of white supremacist terrorism. Like there was no, oh, we just forgive you, this, that, and the other, so it's done. Hitting on what they said, when you can sit down and talk to the person, well, let's bring up, how Martin Luther King couldn't forgive, James Earl Ray for killing him, So how do you know when you wholeheartedly forgave somebody? I can sit here and say I forgive you all day, but that doesn't mean anything. Just because I say I wholeheartedly forgave you doesn't mean I wholeheartedly forgave you, which can lead back to the thought of justice. Because as us being human beings,
do you think there's a genocide, though? I think was the question.
huh?
I think the question was, do you think there's a genocide?
Well, she had asked me.
Sure. No, I'm just asking.
So.
I think
No, yeah, I was just saying because of what like you were saying about the like killings of African Americans. So I was just like
Yeah.
trying to put the two and two together.
Yeah, I got you. And then I was also just like going off based on what they were saying, But that's all.
I have a question for our EME team, and this is expanding on a good point that the Rwandan team made. So they brought up the case when the punitive justice does not get rid of the underlying problem, which their example is anti-Semitism in Germany. But in the event that the punitive justice actually exacerbates the problem, since punitive justice is usually done by a third party, generally the government, when that ends up angering one or the other side more and makes the problem more exacerbated, in the absence of forgiveness, how is justice still superior in that case?
Well, what justice does is for a widespread of those people, it tries to create documentation and legislation that will not allow it to happen again. I can quote Trayvon Martin's mother, as she said, "I just don't want anything else to happen what happened to my boy." Now we could say that's love, or we could mostly say that she was fighting for justice at that sense. She didn't want anything to happen to her boy, which is the same thing that she's been seeing happening in the community to other black men, which was at that time rampant. What that called for was not no more forgiveness. Forgiveness allows you to pass it by and sit back and say, it's okay, keep going. What justice does in this condition is that justice says you have done an action and a wrong. So what we have to do now is that we have to restore this wrong to make sure that the wrongs of yesterday will not be the same wrongs of tomorrow. And what forgiveness does is that it allows this. They say you won't forget, but if you're forgiving, you have to continuously forgive. Every single generation, you have to teach your kids up on your own because no justifiable system does that for you, has no memorial sites, has no documentation to represent you. Then you are starting deeper in the forgiveness pot than where you did in the aftermath of the immediate genocide in the first place.
But in the case that the de facto punitive judgment or justice with the laws being passed to prevent this does not address the de jure actions being made, the underlying problem, anti-Semitism, racism that is still an underlying current, how does that punitive justice not also become a generational issue that has to continually be acted on by the governing body? In that sense, how does forgiveness not play a role at that point?
Well, you can answer. I'm sorry, buddy.
No. We never said that forgiveness doesn't play a role. What we said was in the immediate aftermath of genocide, justice is more important. We never, yes, we agree that forgiveness does, it does play a role, but in the immediate aftermath, like we were saying, the justice is more important. Going off of some of the examples that he was saying with Trayvon Martin and things, like I was telling somebody else in the audience, you can say, I forgive you, like I was saying to her, but forgiveness is more for the individual as justice is for the community. So, you good? Or do you want me to continue? You good?
Continue if you want to.
Oh, but you good?
Thank you, Kenzie. Is somebody else about to stand up back here? I think I saw.
Yeah. So this is for both sides. So I think one of the key things in this resolution here is right in the immediate aftermath of genocide. So I'm curious, as and both sides can answer it however they want. Do you feel like this action, whether it's forgiveness or justice, should come from like an outside entity like the UN, whether it should come from the government or whether it should come from the people within those communities? Where do you think the justice and the forgiveness begins first?
To us, the people affected by the genocide, is where forgiveness should start. It's where forgiveness basis of us saying that this is more important.
Oh, in the immediate aftermath, I mean, answering your question, we defend justice because that is the only thing that's going to pull a accountability to what has happened. You can, like we said in examples earlier, we had a 100-year hiatus between 1864 and the abolishment of slavery to 1964 and the Civil Rights Act. That was when justice was found, but during those 100 years, a lot of forgiveness was going on. I'm sure a lot of forgiveness was going on in the church where 4 girls were bombed at during that moment. But
so the forgiveness has to start with the government then?
No, the forgiveness doesn't have to start within the government. It doesn't have to start from an outside government. It starts within the people that who want a better tomorrow for their children and themselves both. That's where the justice comes in the aftermath of genocide, because yes, the forgiveness can come in the immediate interpersonal self. But where this justice takes over is when you say, I don't want my kids to do the same thing that I did. And I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of people who did that in the aftermath of slavery in 1864. And what happened? People were still being legally killed with no document. It took until Emmett Till that we started to see a rise for a search of justice. And that is why in the immediate aftermath, we need justice to stop things like Emmett Till from happening years down the road.
All right, I have a question for the D&E team. It's 2 really short ones, but as a society, the first question, would you say that justice is carried out for the society through law? That justice, we achieve justice through legislation? Would you say that's fair?
That's one of the components, yes.
Yes. How would you legislate one's emotions, such as anti-Semitism? How can laws prevent one from having those eternal feelings?
Well, the fact that there's checks and balances on if they act those out in the public themselves. If you act and conduct yourself, to quote with George Orwell, if all men were angels, we wouldn't need laws. So if everybody had just this sense of forgiveness and compassion, we wouldn't even have a genocide to begin with at all either. So then we wouldn't need the law. So then we wouldn't need the justice. So then, yes, there would be forgiveness. But men are not all angels. So there's people that act out of terms and act out of the human rights and the decency that they have. But it's the laws through legislation that puts the checks and balances on there to restore the order, to not do this again.
Time for one more question, please.
This question, I want both the negative and affirmative to answer, but what would you say is the best historical example of the aftermath of genocide being dealt with most effectively in restoring community and creating justice?
Like I said before, he said that I'm going to elaborate more. So, okay, I'll give an example. We talked about, Rwanda dealt more on the restorative justice. And restorative justice is on the basis of truth, reconciliation, and forgiveness. So for this restorative justice to work, there should be forgiveness. And it did work because you would say now Rwanda is ranked one of the safest country and in Africa, in the top 12 safest country in Africa. And you would say that the government right now is trying to it's actually making our country developing. You would say that right now most of the students in the country study. Primary schools are free. You would say right now that I have the chance to come here in the U.S. without somebody running after me. So that's an example of how forgiveness gets God.
Could you ask the question one more time?
Give an example of maybe a genocide in history that you think was dealt with, thanks for your side using justice and forgiveness, but the aftermath was dealt with in a way that actually created justice and restored unity or set out or accomplished what was happening.
So you want me to give you an example of where justice has worked? Well, let's in our case, I can actually give you an example of where it hasn't and where it has. We discussed that it's a lack of justice that creates genocide. So we can continue on the path of African American killings. We can also go with the Wounded Knee Massacre. But I'm going to talk about the African Americans one more time for you. There was a lack of justice, and the list goes on. If you've ever, look it up, there's a list. Many people, who have gotten killed where the police officers, have been let go. Well, there hasn't been any justice, which have led to more and more and more and more. When we can look at the Holocaust. You haven't seen a reoccurrence of the Holocaust due to justice. So what we basically, like, we going back to our mode, that we believe that justice is more important, because when there is a lack of justice, that's when it creates genocide.
Thank you all. We will hear the last two speeches of the evening. We'll hear from Lynn, who will sum up the affirmative, and hear from Thaddeus, who will sum up the negative. So if you'd like, by all means, take the floor. Thank you very much.
Okay, so my name is Lauren. I'm on the negative side, and I would on affirmative side. I'm so sorry, and I like to talk about what I'll be talking about this night. So I will elaborate more on forgiveness being the essence of a community, bringing unity, and forgiveness beginning with recognition. Now, before I go to that, I would like first to talk about more what my opponents have said. So they say justice was served in Germany. Now, for justice to be served, they kind of say that there shouldn't be more killings, because they say justice hasn't served. That's why there's this African Americans being killed. So for justice to have worked, that's because people are not killing, are not dying. And I am sorry, but I might have heard wrong, but my teammates say that there's still cases of anti-Semitism. And in this year, 2018, the New York Times says that there was attack raised in Germany and Berlin, and the people are raising a painful question of whether even today Jews could feel truly safe in Germany. This is a case where it shows that justice was there, as they say, but this justice does not work because people are still dying. And then another question is, I asked if justice includes forgiveness, and they said no, justice does not include forgiveness. But I'm very sorry, but justice does include forgiveness. Justice works when there is forgiveness. I would like to talk more about the example that I gave. In Rwanda, people were forced to live together. People were forced to live next to the perpetrators that killed hundreds of people, that killed their families, their parents, their kids, you name it. And because of that, they were forced to forgive. Now, when that forgiveness came is when the country got better. When this restorative justice, which includes forgiveness, came, that's when the country got developed. It doesn't, in no case that this justice with no forgiveness lead to better living of our country. I'll give an example how justice with no forgiveness did not lead to better living of our country. There's still people in our country that are in jail because of they killed. And there was justice. You would say there's punitive justice because they killed people and they went to jail. But till this moment, these people has the mindset of killing a Tutsi. So the moment that person gets out of jail, he's going to do what? Kill a Tutsi. So justice was still served. But if justice was still served, that person, if they get out of jail, they're still going to kill. So at the end of the day, is it more important than forgiveness when we see that forgiveness is the one that brought our country and many more countries to better living? I don't think so. And then another thing I would like to talk about is they say that when there is no justice, then that's when the genocide starts. And you made a good point by saying that there's no justice while these African American people are dying and that justice is not served. Now to you, that's justice. But to the to the judge that was judging that white person that killed the black person, that was justice to him, not bringing the guy to prison. So at the end of the day, there is no universal measuring of justice, is there? No. Because I would like to give another example. Justice in 1994, it was bringing a Tutsi in the jail or killing a Tutsi. And as he said before, there were legal killing of slaves. That was justice to them. So nobody would put another person in jail because they killed a slave, because that was justice to them. And now justice has changed, right? So at the end of the day, justice is still not also a universal measuring. So their definition can still be wrong at this point because you can go probably another country and still won't be the same. Which again, I'm saying justice is not more important. Another thing I would like to talk about is we didn't say that forgiveness is just saying out loud, I forgive you.